Adam, how are we doing, man?
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm very well today. How are you guys?
We're doing
Great.
well. Good to see you again. So you're the founder and CEO of Football.Fun, which is a crypto-native fantasy football platform or soccer for our North American friends, including ourselves. So can you just give us an overview of Football.Fun and kind of tell us how it's different than traditional sports betting or fantasy sports platforms that people may have in their brains?
Yeah, I'd love to, absolutely. So, yeah, as you say, it is a fantasy-based product. I sort of think of it more of a kind of sports trading app in many ways. We're definitely aiming at that crypto native audience. I think one thing we know is that crypto natives like speculation. So do sports fans. I think there's a massive market for this product, and we've seen things like NBA Top Shot, which got a lot of people into crypto in the first place. There's a huge following there. We've seen games like So Rare as well. And I think we're kind of second mover in that sort of space, having had more time to sort of watch economies and learn from how those developed. So on like the Top Shot side, you're like, hey, this is cool, but you need an actual retention mechanic. You need a game, you need an experience around it. And I think one key difference with us and something like a So Rare or an Ultimate Champions is that we base this all on a token. So players are tokens in our game. They're fractionized, they're tradable, much more liquid. They trade exactly the same way a token on Uniswap trades. So if you're a crypto native, you basically know how this works already. We have kind of real world athletes. You trade them. When they perform in real life or don't, you win or you don't. So it's a kind of skill-based game. You trade these players as tokens, and our other USP is basically the economics of maximizing rewards back to the users, because that's always been a complaint about some of these platforms, is that users feel like they put in way more than they get back. It's because they have. It's genuinely baked into those economics. So we're looking to fix that with our product. So we've just today sold out our first sort of revenue event. So we sold out in 12 seconds, which was quite remarkable. And it was just a small mint for our early community, really. But we have also just announced that we've raised an additional 2.5 million in liquidity from Sixth Man Ventures and others to basically seed our market. So when people join the game next week, they're going to need liquidity to start selling into, and our existing investors have helped start that party for us.
So if I understand correctly, I'm purchasing players, which are fungible tokens. The price of those is obviously dynamic based on the demand for those players. And then rewards are distributed based on their performance in the real games. What's the source of the rewards?
So basically 95% of liquidity that comes in stays within the platform. So this is another one of our innovations, is that you don't technically deposit into Football.Fun. You move money to your own wallet. So it's completely self-custody. And we don't have access to the funds that go in the smart contract that runs the market either. So once money stays in that liquidity pool, that is also effectively the reward pool. So we've seen models in the past where I've spent many hours analyzing them, days, weeks, months, where you get these big annual announcements where the platform, whoever it is, DraftKings or whatever, go, right, rewards are X, and then everyone tries to calculate and then they get it wrong, and then they end up unhappy because it was too high, or the platform runs out of money because they were giving away too much or not enough, and people stop playing. So really for us, it's like, hey, we kind of sit back a bit. Like the money, we kind of create this platform and this smart contract. The money's there, and people know exactly how much money is there. They make their own decisions, and we don't have these big moments where we're like, hey, promotion for March or anything like that. The money is what is there. And so it can go up and down, and depending on basically trade volume and the amount of liquidity. But as a user or player, I've never quite figured out whether to call them players or users, because then you confuse them with the athletes. But users sounds like they're drug addicts or something. I don't like that. But yeah, they are,
Adam. They are.
Yeah, most of them, good percentage. Anyway, yeah. So you're winning. You've got your squad. They win tournament points. You trade these for packs. Packs give you players, and you can sell them on the market if you want to. So in a way, well, it is true. Like that liquidity pool is also the prize pool. Like if your objective is to ultimately leave the game, it's basically like selling a token or a position in a crypto currency.
Can you talk about so I think something cool that you guys did. So you have, players are fungible tokens, but to actually play the game, you need to keep your players in contract. And to keep them in contract, you have to use, your platform token to, buy this contract that lasts for, I think a week or 3 days or something. And then, so it kind of has just this native demand for the token, and kind of both a way for people to kind of passively play if they just want to speculate on the success of the platform or popularity of players, but also kind of this more active game that you can play that ultimately drives value in the whole system. So can you just talk about that a little bit?
So that the genesis of that really comes from the kind of perennial problem in these games, whether it's FIFA Ultimate Team or So Rare or whatever it is that the platform always ends up needing to sell you new cards. Every single season, you get this sort of surface level of, own your stuff, own your players, own your game, whatever. But it's not really true, because the economics just dictate that the platform needs to print new ones next season and make you buy new ones. We didn't want to do that. So our solution is this contract extension mechanic, where you also need to make sure the game is not a long-term Ponzi scheme, right? Like the existing users need to keep paying if they want to keep taking out as well. So what this does is it means you still hold your tokens. So if you buy a 19-year-old player now, assuming he's still playing at a big club in 10 years' time, you will be using the same tokens that you bought 10 years previously, right? You could still own them and they would still be as useful as they were, assuming the athlete was that good still. But they basically have a ticking clock of, they run out of matches when they play in real life. And if you want to stay eligible for their rewards, you've got to sync our token to keep them in contract effectively. So it's like the sort of anti-Ponzi mechanic, which is one of the key previously unsolved things about these games that no one's ever cracked. So that's our solution to it. And it's one that we've talked about a lot with our player base, and they seem happy. They get it. Most of them are pretty smart. They know they can't just buy a player token and profit from them for 15 years. Everyone would just not believe you. But with that, because it's also quite a low percentage, they're quite happy to either let them run down and just be like, oh, well, I still hold the player. I can trade these like an asset. Or if they want to be more active, then they keep kind of playing them in the games, like kind of picking their squad in a fantasy game.
So it's almost like a Harburger tax on the rewards pool. So it's sort of expiring over time.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to basically keep playing, you've got to keep contributing. And then it doesn't really hurt the economy if people don't. They just kind of sit idle. They're still contributing in a way because they're providing liquidity, they're holding assets. They're just not a drain on the economy because that mechanic has solved that problem.
I'm curious what you think happens to these markets during the off season.
I think we're quite lucky, and now there is also like international tournaments every other year. But the speculation doesn't really end for like in US, like if in NFL, for example, you've got the draft and you've got like, it's a different time, but it's not necessarily not fun. You've got trading going on every day. With this game, what you sort of think about the matches in trading terms, they're like catalysts, right? For like, these are the events that are driving the market action, and you don't always need a game for a catalyst. So pre-season player breaks his leg, hey, he's going to drop on the market. That's a catalyst. So you're still interested in what's going on. Or they move to Real Madrid, bullish. They've just gone up for that reason. So yeah, there's kind of always something to follow. But yeah, it is a sort of natural thing in fantasy sports games that they do have these peaks and troughs as well. I don't necessarily look at that as every investor I ever speak to always says that. And they're like, oh, aren't you just going to lose like all your engagement and all that sort of stuff? I think maybe, but I also think sometimes it's good for people to have a bit of a break from something and kind of look forward to coming back. So yeah, it's not
a good buying opportunity for the believers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives a kind of a seasonal dynamic to the trading as well. Some people will want to sell at the end of a season, and then that gives an opportunity for new people to come in or whatever. So all good.
Yeah, so I know you did go, Nicholas.
I was just say, I'm curious, it's in such a busy market, how are you able to make Football.Fun sort of well known amongst your potential user base?
It is. It's quite a. I think that the best thing we've been able to do is sort of target known users and influencers of similar platforms, because we have lived in that environment for a long time. So we know them quite personally. So they're willing to sort of always very happy to invite us on their show or talk to us about it. And we're trying to solve a lot of the problems that they long complain about. So they've also got PTSD. It's fair to say, like, they have been let down by many platforms who have not got the economics right, or they've just been an outright rug and weren't really intending to build anything cool. More often than not, it's like well-intended people who get it wrong, and they do have that kind of PTSD factor. So that's something you've got to overcome, and I think you only really do that over time. If Football.Fun is still performing well and consistently in a year from now, then you'll get a lot more people coming in. But initially, we're going for that core of 20,000 to 50,000 early adopters. You can do great in crypto. They're very kind of high spend per head individuals. So we're also not trying to mainstream too quickly. When we try and take additional market share, what we're going to do next year, the first thing would be to do NFL.Fun or NBA.Fun and go for different fans of different sports, because it's actually built to clone in that way. The fantasy side of the business is actually quite straightforward relative to the fact this is effectively a kind of DeFi-ish product where it's got to have the security of a bank. It's got to have all the features that a good DEX has. In many ways, it's vastly more sophisticated than you would expect for a fantasy product. But once you've overcome that, a lot of that complexity actually clones quite well. Once you can trade a football player or a soccer player, you can trade an NFL player in exactly the same way. So we're going to be looking to roll that out next year, and that will all use our Sport.Fun token as well.
Got it. So yeah, you mentioned the founder pack sale that sold out in 12 seconds, which is awesome, and the $2.5 million of liquidity you raised, and that sets you up to go live next week, right? So can you tell us what happens next week?
Yeah, so we sold it in two phases. One was really slow, deliberately. So we gave everyone really tiny buy limits. So average buy-in was $300 to $400, and there was only about 300 people who were whitelisted for that sale. And we gave them 48 hours. And initially I started getting a few DMs, people oh, it's kind of bearish, man. Why is this going so slowly? And I'm like, this was kind of the point. We wanted to just give people time to make their buys and not really have to stress and focus on the real high value people. And we've done the same with our investor group as well. The investors, the people who provide the liquidity, these are long-term existing investors who have our token. They almost all have equity in the company, apart from a couple of the angels. And they're not there to sell on the market in day two for a 1.5x. They're just not. So if you're really careful about who you select, it sets you up for long-term success. So that's something we've been really, really careful of. But then the second phase two started, and we took the limits off. We've 5x'd everyone's buy limits. And they just mopped up the remaining in about 12 seconds, which was pretty interesting to see.
Yeah. Then, so is it Tuesday the game goes live, or what's the?
That's right. So
and what does that mean? Liquidity pools are launched and people can buy. Any player that plays professional soccer?
We limit it to a few hundred. So we don't have 5,000 tokens. It would just be insane. We concentrate the liquidity in the best athletes. So we're starting with 100. So we're going to be deploying those. That's kind of next job. Deploying those to the DEX, which we're going to do in the next couple of days. Friday is when people reveal their packs. So they have this pack opening experience. They'll see who they got. Should be a really exciting moment. We're going to do a stream tomorrow with Whale Swoosh. Where he's going to sort of host a few of our investors. Are going to sort of open their packs, because what's interesting about them is that they're actually really good players. People will recognize them because they're at the top of the leaderboard. That is how interested and passionate about the project. There are. So Friday is the pack reveal. Should be an exciting moment. And then Tuesday is we open the market for trading. We're going to stagger it. So again, everyone has these buy limits. We're not letting a whale come in and just be like, right, I'm putting $1 million into your mall. It would be a cool short-term story, and then we'd regret it forever because one guy would just own all the supply. So we have buy limits that gradually sort of taper off over the course of a month. And it means that more people get an early chance to participate and we get a wider group of users. I'm sure people will tell me, I don't like take the brakes off, let's send this to Valhalla, whatever. But I do think it's important to do it in that way. And then the first match is Friday. So yeah, huge week ahead for us.
Awesome. Well, Adam, we'll leave it there. Let you get back to your day. I'm sure you have a few things to do ahead of Friday and next week. So really appreciate you jumping on. Recommend everyone checks out the platform and gets ready to buy some players next week if you care about football.
Pleasure.
Hey, congratulations on the sale.
Thanks, guys.
See you.
Take care, man.